The obvious question, Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson. When you're working with Peter Jackson, even if it's not like on a one-to-one basis every day or anything.
It was.
It was?
It
okay.
was, yeah.
Did you have an inkling of just how big of a Beatles fan he was?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
During one of the days at Abbey Road, he said, I want to go out with all you guys and walk across the zebra crossing. And I have to tell you, I mean, at that point, it was maybe 35 years since I started there. I had never done that. I'd never taken a picture on the crossing because I thought, I'm stuff. I don't need to do that.
I've done it.
Right. But I didn't do it. And because I had such ridiculous admiration for Peter, I mean, that was like the most wonderful experience. I thought, okay, if he was inviting me to walk across the street with him, I'll do it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you know he was planning in the back of his mind to do Get Back, to go, and was there any talk of that?
Not. We're talking, I mean, this would be 20 years. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I don't think it was lost on him that that like 30, 40 years earlier, the Beatles had considered making Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
Did you know about that?
I did, yeah.
So I don't know. I knew that he was a big fan.
So when did you find out about Get Back, that he was going to do that?
I don't know. I don't think I had any inside information. It was just generally when it was announced that.
And you just weren't surprised?
No, not at all. I think also that after Lord of the Rings, and then he did The Hobbit that I didn't work on. He really didn't want to do anything that big or demanding again. So he just looked at completely making films about World War I. And
that's such a good film.
Yeah, but again, I mean, there's another throwback to the Beatles. Just move on and do something completely different. Don't repeat yourself.
Well, it's interesting though, because Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are both absolutely monumental projects.
Yes.
So maybe he's not doing things quite on the same financial scale.
Right.
But he's taking on monumental projects.
Yeah, and he does tend. I mean, the only thing I was a little surprised that he made Get Back as a 3-part thing. Because it was another Peter Jackson thing in 3 parts. I don't know whether there was enough footage to warrant that.
Okay, then I've got to ask you the question. What I assume you've watched it, probably multiple times.
Mm. Only once.
Only once.
Yeah.
What did it do for you? Did it bring you a lot of memories of the personalities? Did you feel like the personalities portrayed by Peter are accurate to your memories?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. The interplay between the characters of the Beatles changed a lot. They weren't the same on every session, even I. So but I still found it recognizable as the experience that I had working with them in person.
I loved it, obviously. But I remember as a child watching the original Let It Be movie and loving that too. I mean,
yeah.
And when you're fans of a band, you love that sort of inside information.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been, in retrospect, like nowadays, every album would have been videoed and filmed, and you could do that with all of it. And it's just, it's a pity that Get Back was the only one that had that treatment.
My feeling was, it's like Paul's confidence was just, it seemed like he was just on a creative high. And it was only a couple months later, you're working with him on Abbey Road. I mean, there's songs from his first solo record that he's playing.
Yeah. I assisted
and
on
Abbey Road.
I assisted on that.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Oh, the solo album? It was, a lot of that was started outside of Abbey Road and up on his farm in Scotland. And again, a bit like a repeat of the Apple thing, we had equipment sent from the studios up so that he could use it there. And then the sessions that I worked on, again as assistant, was picking up where he'd left off and overdubbing on the tapes, from Scotland, and a few, I think Maybe I'm Amazed was done from scratch in the studio with him playing everything. That was the other thing. You have Paul. I mean, as I said, when I worked with John and Paul on Ballad of John and Yoko, now it was just Paul and Paul and Paul.
Did you work on any other Paul solo records?
I think I'm credited somewhere on Red Rose Speedway, but I'm really not sure. Maybe it was just one or two sessions. I find stuff that gets documented that said I tape hopped on a Pink Floyd album for a day here and a day there. Really have no memory of that at all. It's amazing when you think of the like unbelievable records. Say, did I do this or did I do that? When I was making the transition to move out here and wanted to be in films, John Williams, music editor, I'd worked with in London a few times, and he was like very pleased to see me in LA, and he does the normal, you'll do great, blah, 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 blah. And at the time I hadn't actually moved out here full time, but I was just like looking around. And he said, we've got a session at Sony next Wednesday with John Williams, and would you like to engineer it? And I said, next Wednesday? He said, yeah. And I said, I can't, I got to go back to London. He said, John, I'm offering you a session with John Williams. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, what is this that, you turn that down and you've got to go back to London? What, are you crazy? Who is it? And I said, well, I got a session with Paul McCartney. Which was actually one of, Paul was going through his period when he was doing some light classical music like Standing Stone, and it was something connected with Standing Stone that I had to go back for. But it kind of, it brought into focus that one of the things that we all learnt, Abbey Road, EMI, same, is that when you're dealing with a certain category of artist, they're all equal. You can't say that this one is more important than that one because it just doesn't pan out. And we had this very strict rule on staff that if you agree to do something, you do it.
Yeah.
And if something better comes along, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's that story.
Did you ever work with John Williams after
No.
that? I had a meeting earlier today, and we were just talking about the world that we grew up in, where, we realized that we have jobs this side of the glass because of the people on the other side of the glass that have the talent and
yes,
have the creativity. And you know that to do well, you had to understand your place. And it wasn't like false humility and bowing down and stuff like that, but it was our job.
Yes. There is definitely a skill set to having the right attitude on a session. The thing is, I've always felt from my own personal point of view, you could work on different types of job. One would be a project where it ends up being number one selling record and selling gold and platinum, billions of sales. Another project you could do that doesn't really sell at all, but wins Oscars and Grammys and all kinds of accolades. Then there's a third one that doesn't sell, doesn't get good reviews, but has a room full of great people that you really want to spend time with. And when people ask me which of those three makes the best experience, it's that one. It's the third one. The great people in the room. And then it becomes less important. Yes, it would be great if it went to number one. It would be great if it won an award. But if it doesn't, you had a good time working on it.
What were the main speakers that you would use at Abbey Road? Was there a preference pair of speakers that you would?
Oh, it changed.
It changed?
Yeah, I mean, the speakers at Abbey Road in the 60s would have been the Altec coaxials. Then tannoy speakers in Lockwood cabinets. Then in the mid-70s, JBLs and Uris. And then B&W came along. And I remember the chief classical engineer at the time said, our friends over at Decca are using this B&W speakers. Do you know? And he asked everybody, do you know anything about them? And I said, well, I've actually got a pair of bookshelf speakers from B&W and in my house. So I don't know, but they sound good in my house. And then B&W basically wanted Abbey Road to have 801s, 802s. So they sent us whatever we wanted.
And do you still like them?
Yeah.
Still use them?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. We've now got to the point where the B&Ws, have diamond tweeters.
Wow.
And are incredibly expensive. I mean, they really are an audiophile speaker more than what we know of as a studio monitor. And I might be working on a video game that is going to end up on someone's phone or laptop. And I question, do I need to monitor this on like £30,000 diamond tweeter speakers? I won't say any more than that.
Well, I suppose as long as you enjoy it.
Oh yeah, they sound good, but you do have to bear in mind there is a real world out there as well.
So do you reference on cheaper environments?
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of thing do you do to reference?
It depends where I am. I think that the most important thing that I found is not really the tonality of the speakers themselves, but the integrity of the music that's coming out of it and the balance of the music. And I think for that reason, one of the ones that I used to like a lot, in addition to what we had at Abbey Road, was ATC, because ATC always made a really big deal about the integrity of their mid-range. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's, in terms of a true studio monitor, that concentration on getting the mid-range right is one of the key factors.
I've found recently there's sort of a move away from that. I like mid-range forward speakers. Mm. I mean, I grew up on speakers that, I wouldn't say growled at you, but definitely like mid-range was up front. Yeah. There seems to be a very big move to like really soft sounding mid-range. Have you noticed that as well?
Not as much. I think ATC have changed a little bit over the years. I mean, when I first moved to America, I got an LCR set of ATCs, and I was very happy with them at the time. It was another thing because we'd had some at Abbey Road, so I was used to that. I think that tastes in sound changes. I mean, it changes with me and what I like and what I like to use, and also in the change of the fashion of music. So I don't think it's surprising that people say, oh, a few years ago I liked these and now I like these.
Yeah, that makes sense. So speaking of which, we're sitting in an Atmos room.
We are.
Which leads me to my next question. Yeah. What are you currently working on?
Well, we're in this room, we're in Studio F in the Village in Los Angeles. And they've just opened Atmos monitoring with 7.1.4 in quite a small room, but it really works. I think the guys at Cali did a really great job in fitting a 714 system in this room and 3 subwoofers as well.
Crazy.
There's 2, there's a subwoofer either side of the couch and 1 under the desk. And it does work amazingly well. About a month or so ago, I got a call from a lady composer called Satya, and she's working on a very unique musical project called the Athenaeum of Sound. Yeah. The Athenaeum Sound is a very immersive experience, and she's been working on researching this for several years, and she wanted to record a few instruments that are only available with one musician here in Los Angeles, because this musician called Alan Towers actually builds his own instruments. So it needed to be recorded here in LA. And one of Satya's colleagues in Europe suggested to her that we record it listening in Atmos as we record it. She called me up and I told her, as far as I know, there are Atmos mixing rooms and there are scoring stages or recording studios, but not the same. 99% of all the people I know of record on either 5.1 or stereo speakers, mostly stereo. And then we'll go into an Atmos mixing room to do the dub or the Atmos mix. And she said, well, I've been recommended that we try and do it simultaneously. So is there anywhere that we can record and monitor in Atmos simultaneously? And I've had a long relationship. Since I've moved here, I had a very long relationship with Tina and Jeff here at the Village. And they, by coincidence, they had just installed a Kali IN8 speaker system. The room wasn't actually finished at the time of that call, but they said in a couple of weeks, we will be opening it and doing final calibration tests. And so we decided to delay the recording by about a month. And we held the session here a couple of weeks ago, linking up the Moroccan room, which is just down the hallway, into this control room, which is now beautifully set up for Atmos. This wasn't something that anybody here at the Village had too much experience. They had a little bit of tutorial from Avid and from Dolby. And I contacted a very, very helpful man from Avid called Tony Joy, who was absolutely more than willing to give us his input. And he helped us with an I/O that was going to work for a live tracking session. And he pointed out, which I already knew, that this was not something that was usually done and possibly had not been done before. But he said, theoretically, it should work. And I said, well, do you want to just pop along to the session in case it doesn't work? And he was more than happy to come along. And he gave us, he together with the Village, came up with an agreement on an I/O that would work and that would give headphone and talk back to the performer. Whilst in here, we were listening both to the 714 and also the binaural fold down, all at the same time. And so that's how we come to be here.
Now, you were telling me off camera earlier about how you recorded these instruments.
Yes. Well, we had the main instrument to be recorded was a samolan. I'd never come across it. Perhaps, you do the old YouTube and Wikipedia, find what is this? And it's basically a large wooden resonating chamber, which is about 3 foot by 2 foot and about 2.5 feet high. And it has coming out the top a series of maybe a dozen resonating copper rods that are, I think, about 10 foot tall. Wow. And it's played with a variety of soft and blunt instruments. Mm. And it creates, very...
Bowed, yeah.
Bowed, hit, rubbed, you name it. All different kinds of things. I don't like to use the word new age, but I mean, that's how most people would kind of understand what we're talking about. The idea was to try and capture this in a 714 environment that would also fold nicely down to binaural. And so I started off by putting this instrument in the middle of the room and then creating a circle of 7 mics around it, which were U87s, which actually represented 1 mic per speaker in a 7.1 speaker layout. And then I put 4 additional mics overhead above the rods that would represent the 4 speakers in the ceiling. So we had that covered as an overall pickup. Then in addition, we had some other pickups. We had an octa mic, which is a second order ambisonic microphone. So that was another option. We had a Neumann dummy head. I made up an idea which we called a fake head, which is basically two DPA omnis that were the same, 20 centimeters apart is how dummy heads work. Basically, it's the distance of your ears to yours. So we had the dummy head from Neumann, and we had the DPA omnis giving a second image that I think might be used for height information, and some contact mics and a couple of 84s. So it was a mixture of like old school analog techniques.
Where were you placing the dummy heads?
Well, the dummy heads got moved around a bit. When we did the Samalan, there's actually a big opening, a little bit like the hole on an acoustic guitar, but big enough for a human head, to get inside. And so we put the dummy head inside, and that caught all. It's very similar to putting a mic inside an acoustic guitar. So after we did the Samalan, there were other instruments, again, instruments I'd never seen before, but I suppose the closest is woodwind instruments where you literally blow, and other things, a storm drum, and certain metallic rattle. And for that, we used the dummy head, the two DPA mics, and Satya would walk around the dummy head and play these instruments, trying to simulate what would happen in a binaural experience. So really, the whole project, which was a bit of a R&D experience for everybody, was a combination of like theoretical analog seven mic, old school technique, ambisonic techniques, binaural techniques, and
would you mind explaining ambisonics to everybody?
With the different techniques that we used simultaneously to track it, with the circle of U87s, which was a very old school analog technique, was combined with a ambisonic technique, which is a single mic with multi-capsules. Mm-hmm. The original ambisonic mic was from Calrec. It's called a Soundfield, that had 4 capsules. And more recently, they're expanding that, and that's called first order ambisonics. And now there's second order ambisonics that increase the ability to define the height information. Mm. And so we used a mic called an Octamic, made by Core. And that also is a very new thing. And so we used that, and then the dummy head, which is an accepted binaural technique. So we're basically using 3 schools of research in immersive sound. Finally, when all the other overdubs are done, when the final mix is done, we'll decide what works for each instrument. I really think that it'll probably, we recorded about 5 or 6 different instruments in addition to the Samalan, and I won't be surprised if we use a little bit of each technique.
I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you finished recording? Are you in the mix stage now?
No, it's got a long way to go. There's plans to record more instruments in New York, where Satya lives at the moment, and also an orchestra overdub in London.
Abbey Road, or?
Who knows? It's almost impossible to get in Abbey Road at the moment because of the post-pandemic rush. All the projects that were either compromised or put on ice for 2.5 years are now waiting up to get booked in. For quite a few years now, I'd say like maybe 12, 13 years, I've been recording orchestral scores for Blizzard and their video games, and, World of Warcraft and Overwatch and some other games that are yet to be announced.
Do you know all these, Eric?
There you go. So, I mean, the composing team on that are all like very young and very excited, and it's a great experience to work on that kind of contemporary music. And the kind of music that goes down on video games is just so varied that it just like keeps you on your toes.
Well, I feel like kids now are so eclectic.
Yes.
Where when we grew up and you sort of go through a genre, like this 6 months, you're really into this kind of music. And now my son's 15 and he loves everything.
Yes.
His favorite band is Steely Dan, but he also listens to music that goes dip, doop, 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 dip, doop, doop. I mean, it's like,
yes,
he's techno and Steely Dan and classical and it's all just music.
Yes. And, I enjoy anything that is well done.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be any particular genre. It's just like if it's well done and well played, well written, well played, well recorded, well produced, then I'll like it.
Yeah, I feel like the old Duke Ellington quote, isn't it? Only two types of music: good and bad.
You're taking me back because one of the first things I heard when I walked in the door at Abbey Road was actually from Richard Lush, who we talked about, who was on Sgt. Pepper. And he would only say, it's great or it's rubbish. Those two words, like, what do you think, Richard? It's great or it's rubbish?
One thing that is a beautiful theme is orchestral music. It is interesting that as tastes change in recording techniques, in genres, this, that, and the other, hip and orchestral music has just remained a constant. There's something classy and classic and timeless about orchestral recordings that you can incorporate it into World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings, and you can have a techno soundtrack going along with it.
Yeah. Don't ask me to explain why. I don't know. A lot of people, have said to me, what's the best orchestra in the world if you had to choose one? And, I say, you can't say that because it's a bunch, big orchestral session, it's a bunch of 70, 80, 90 musicians. You don't know what they had for breakfast that day. They could have a good day, they could have a bad day. So it's just this kind of coming together of talents, and some days are good, some days are unbelievably great, and that's kind of what makes it interesting.
Yeah, my father, I'm sure your father was the same way, would always be like, who's the conductor?
Right.
If it's salty, I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
It'd be like, who's the conductor?
Actually, that is a very good point because, again, when people say, what's the best orchestra at the moment, a lot of it depends on who the conductor is. You can watch videos, I'm sure, of orchestras playing without a conductor.
Yeah.
And or with a conductor doing very little. But sometimes, the conductor can just look at 90 musicians, and if they really respect him, he could just like wink at them, like Bernstein. There was an amazing video of Bernstein conducting in Vienna, and he had his hands down at his side the entire time, and he conducted this piece simply by looking at them and little twitch of the nose and a little wink. Like, what's the cue for the brass to come in? Will be a wink. And I mean, when you see something like that, it's like you realize the influence a great conductor can have on an orchestra.
Yeah, it's amazing. What a wonderful way to end.
Yeah.
That was absolutely incredible.
My pleasure.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Warren.
Any comments and questions, please leave them below. You must have a website, yes?
Yes.
We're going to put a link. There's going to be a link to the website down there as well. And we'll get your bio, and there'll be a blog link and all that other fun stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Ciao.
Ciao.
Tschüss. Tut ziens. Goodbye.